Welcome, Dionne, to the Redefine Reality podcast. I'm so excited that you're here.
So good to be here. And the way we got here, I'm just so excited. It was just so divinely orchestrated. So I can't wait for this conversation. So great to be here.
Yeah, just for a little context, Dionne and I met on an Unleash Your Brave live event, virtual event, where she was coming on to watch one of the facilitators, one of the speakers share about something that would be taught at the live event in September. And so Dionne and I connected because we were talking about forgiveness and how powerful and healing it is. She has a beautiful book, and we'll get into all of that, but the healing power of forgiveness and how it's connected to the weight, the physical weight that your body carries. So when she said this, I was like, wait, what? Are you kidding me? I teach this stuff. And we were just jamming. So I was like, you need to come on my podcast. So here we are. So Dionne, would you please tell everyone a little bit about yourself, a little backstory, where you came from, what you've done, your journey, how you ended up where you are today?
Sure. So again, my name is Dionne Nicholls-Germain. I'm actually also known as the Chief Forgiveness Officer. But it didn't start there, of course. There's a whole testimony, as we know. Behind every coach, there's usually one heck of a story, right? So my story actually begins in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, believe it or not. That's where I grew up, but I had big dreams, to work in fashion. So that's what brought me to the Big Apple and love, right? So I also met my college sweetheart. We were both, I was maybe 19 at the time when I met him, but we also had, these big dreams together, right? For him to work on Wall Street and for me to work in women's luxury fashion. So I'm happy to say we got to do that. I actually got to do that for over 20 years. Working with some of the most beautiful, European brands, traveling to Europe, to Italy and Paris and all the things, right? At one point, we had a beautiful son together. We had the brownstone in Brooklyn. From the outside looking in, we're living the dream, until we weren't. One day I found out that he was actually stepping out on the relationship.
No.
Yeah. And I did choose to forgive. I really wanted my son to have both parents, but it became clear as to why when I would bring up commitment, right, he would kind of freeze like a deer in headlights, But we both didn't grow up with our fathers, in our lives. So we were committed to that. I ended up forgiving. And lo and behold, a few years later, I find out, there's a secret child, actually already 3 at the time.
My God.
You can imagine that rocked me to my core.
My God.
Believe it or not, I forgave. We were able to blend our family beautifully, right? It's not his fault he came into this world, right? My son, a little brother now. However, unfortunately, the infidelity did not stop. So,
Oh my God.
yeah. So that's what I decided. Okay, I'm going to move on, right? However, I wasn't a coach back then. As I mentioned, I was a fashion girl. My faith was nowhere near, where it is now. But what I somehow just intuitively I knew for me to actually create my next chapter, for me to make room for the good love, right, that I believed I was worthy of, not to mention just above and beyond all of that. Like I was really committed to my son's well-being, right, that he would know that he had 2 parents, whether they're together or not, right, that we had his back and that we were united, And I'm happy to say, fast forward, we were able to create a really healthy, loving co-parenting relationship. And to the point where, we could even take family trips together. Till this day, there's certain holidays we share. My husband and I, we bring the turkey on Thanksgiving, So it was somewhere around, I was 40s. So I'm still a single mom, 40 at the time. And I felt like there was more I was being called to do. I'm still working in fashion at that point. And I didn't know what it was, but I thought maybe I want to be a kindergarten school teacher. So just when I started looking into that, my ex reaches out and he says, you know what? I want to launch a financial literacy youth program. Will you help me? And I said, okay, wow. It's still educating. It's still empowering, right? The next generation. Your gifts don't always come packaged exactly the way you expect them to, but it's my ex, right? So, but I ended up going for it.
That's amazing.
Creating a curriculum. Now we're teaching it in high schools, youth nonprofits, under-resourced areas. From that, 5-star rated podcast is born. Now we're assigned to a network. We're getting sponsors. Next thing you know, we're getting flown back to our hometown of Ottawa, Ontario to teach the program at his alma mater at Ottawa University.
Oh, this is amazing.
Right? So I'm just giving you a little tidbit as to why I'm so passionate about and that's just a tidbit of why I'm so fired up about this message of forgiveness. My son met his grandfather at 13 because by going back home, I rekindled my relationship with my dad. That's a whole other story. estranged for 30 years. So just giving you a sense, just seeing the generational impact, the exponential healing, and then just the limitless possibility. I wouldn't be here with you today if I hadn't kept choosing forgiveness. So that's, how it all came to pass. But eventually I realized there's the podcast, the financial literacy program, that was his thing. Even though I knew I wanted to use my voice, right, and make a difference, it was still his thing. So I'm a pandemic story. And during the pandemic, I launched my coaching practice, Full Force. And then it's just been evolving ever since. And now I realize I'm called to bring this message of forgiveness to the world.
My goodness. Wow. That's such a beautiful story. And just the way that you touched on every single thing and the way that you connected each thing, and just really, truly, my heart, the way you tell stories, I have to say first, I'm hanging at the edge of my seat and listening to every word. And I'm just like hanging on every word, because when you first talked about the infidelity and I'm like, oh, and then you mentioned the kid and I'm like I'm feeling it with you as you're talking about it. I can only imagine how people who are listening or watching, they're like, probably feeling the same way I'm feeling. I have to just, like, as they say, give you your flowers, because woman, I don't know if I personally could have in that position done what you did, because I'm huge on forgiveness. I really am. And this is why we connected, right? Like I told you, and people who are listening probably know this already, but I forgave my dad after not talking to him for a decade. I would walk past him on holidays. My mom would be dreading when I would come visiting, because she knows that my mouth, I just cannot hold it in, and we would bump heads and whatnot. So much resentment I carried on my mom's behalf and other things, obviously. But letting that go, it just was so healing, not for him, for me. And that's the saying, drinking, it's like they say, when you forgive someone, it's like healing for you. It's not for them. And then if you don't, it's like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die, because that's how much toxicity you're carrying and holding in your body. And so I just have to say, your story is really inspiring. And we have even more in common than I thought. When you mentioned fashion in New York, I actually lived in New York. And originally, when I'm born and raised in Chicago, I went to fashion design school my first year straight out of high school. It was for merchandising management, fashion design. I had no idea. I was just really into fashion. I don't know, but that didn't last long. Then I went into teaching and I became a teacher. So we have that in common too. And then I still do deeply, deeply, deeply in my heart. It's like a soul mission. I'm meant to create a program for kids, like how I help adults. And because I was a teacher, fifth grade teacher, won an award, was on the news, all the things. And I even taught at the college level in New York City. And that's just something that I feel like I'm meant to create. The programs that I create for adults, for women, to create something for children, for kids, for the youth, so that they don't have to unlearn the things that we've spent hundreds of hours or thousands of hours and dollars trying to unlearn. So that is definitely a core thing. Maybe we can connect on that, so you can kind of give me the inside scoop on how that goes down in the real world. Because it's a nice idea, it's a nice vision, but like actual execution seems like you guys got it nailed down. And then rekindling with your dad also did that. The one thing that really stood out to me that I hear from a lot of my clients, women that I work with that are in relationships where they want to leave, but they feel like they can't, or that they shouldn't because they want to stay for the kids. My mom was one of them. And she told me the other day, I don't know if she would approve of me saying this, but it is what it is. She said, I should have listened to you. And I was like 10 or 12 years old at the time, telling her to get a divorce. So what I've learned just from working with women and children, their children, is that they actually are absorbing the environment. They can very much tell exactly what is going on, whether you try to hide it from them or not. They sense it, they feel it, they can tell. And I was that kid. And I went straight to my mom, like, why are you still with him? Why don't you get a divorce? Like, imagine your 10 or 12-year-old daughter coming up to you and saying that to you. Is that not permission to leave? But then there's also the very real fear of the money, the financial side. There are women that just physically cannot, because they don't have the money or the means to leave. And that's another thing on my heart, is to create some sort of safe haven, sanctuary space where women can come with their children and they enter in, they get to stay there, have like a dorm room. It's a community kitchen. We all cook together, eat together, all of that. There's workshops and things to help them build a business, and workshops and circles for healing and connection, and for the kids as well to unlearn and, the things and process the things that they witnessed, because it was probably toxic and abusive and all of that. So that's another thing on my heart, my big why of why I'm even working toward anything in my life. These two things are just huge patterns in my life. So the universe doesn't give you something for no reason. It's breadcrumbing you to, in a good way, not like the way a man would breadcrumb you his love. But yeah, so all that to say, woman, we have so much more in common than I thought.
And as you were saying, like, just thank you for reflecting back, because that was the main reason, right? I see the benefits in my son, the fact that we could create this healthy space,
Yeah.
You see it now, 21 years later. Well, now he's 21, I should say. But yeah, the effects, because we chose not to just stay in something that we already know we can't really hide, and that he was able to see a healthier, right, atmosphere instead. Collaborate, seeing his parents rewrite their legacy and put good into the world. Like, how about that?
That's really
Have
cool.
healthy dialogue instead, and just, yeah. So thank you for just reminding me that, yeah,
Yeah.
I did the right thing.
You really, really, really did. Because, the thing is that if you stayed and tried to continue to endure it, try to fix it, and how tumultuous it must have been, I'm not sure, I don't know, but I'd imagine, especially after finding out about the infidelity, and then the way you said it, a secret child, it's like, oh my God, I would have had a heart attack. And to come back from that and to forgive and to continue to try to make it work and be with him. I would love to know, please help me and all the listeners understand what exactly the process of forgiveness was for you, and how someone can practice forgiveness in something that seems so impossible to forgive.
Sure. So in that case, like I said, that was a little different. Somehow, like I said, it was just, that one was more intuitive. But I will say the main crux, and this is actually the crux of what I teach in terms of my dream framework, right? Is when we actually can anchor into our commitment. See, I didn't have a framework back then, but looking back is when I realized it was my being connected to my highest commitment, which was my son's well-being, that allowed me to show up and make decisions from that place.
Wow.
So yes, you still want to make sure that you do what you needed to do to process, right, the hurt. Luckily, I had a really close friend / family group where I could literally cry. Make sure it's better out than in. So crying is healthy. Start there. Bawl your eyes out. So that's important. Release the emotions. Honor what you're feeling, right? Get it out of you. And if you can, whether it's therapy, coaching, there may be something you need support wise, right? But I'm telling you, when you aren't letting your emotions run the show, but anchor into something like your commitment, man, there's no limit to what's possible, right? Because feelings come and go, they're fleeting, right? You don't want to make a permanent decision on a temporary emotion. We honor them, they're valid, right? And yet they shouldn't be taking the lead. So what is something that can ground you? And it doesn't have to be something outside of you. And in this case, it happened to be my son, right? But it could be something as I'm committed to my peace. And so that's why I'm going to choose forgiveness, because peace is what I aspire to.
Yeah.
So if peace is my commitment, then harboring these I don't say negative emotions, because we have all of the emotions for a reason. But there's emotions that are no longer serving you, where it's literally debilitating for you. Then if I can anchor into my peace, well, what does that look like? How do you actually put that into action? Well, that's why I might need to put healthy boundaries. What if because that's another misconception people have, that forgiveness automatically means reconciliation, which is not true, right? Sometimes it may not be safe to have that person back in your life, and you can still forgive so you can have your peace. Because I know when you interact with them, it just quickly becomes an argument. For example, they go back and do that thing that they always do. So if I'm committed to my peace, that's why I won't actually, put myself in the same room with them anymore, but I can forgive, right? So I can have my peace and send them a blessing, wish them well. But over here, I have my peace.
So is that a sign that you know you've forgiven and you've cleared it when you feel peaceful about the thing that you think about when it crosses the line?
That's a very good indicator. When you can hear that person's name much less, and you don't feel a shift in your physiology, right? I say if there's as much physiology as yesterday's ham sandwich, then that's when you know, right, that you've actually forgiven.
Yeah, that's actually a very, very, very good point there, because I remember in my early 20s, I think I was actually 20 years old, I was almost raped and murdered. And I immediately let go of that. And because I said, I know this is happening for me. It came into my experience for a reason. It didn't kill me. It was just to shake me to my core, to rock my world and get me off the path I was on. Nothing else was going to work. And I knew it had to happen. So I believe my soul came here knowing that, because there's no way that, something that tragic and scary, really looking back, see, look how I can speak about it just so neutrally. I'm not triggered at all. I'm not angry. I don't have any fear or resentment. I'm not looking over my shoulder, paranoid that the guy's going to show up again, even though he just got out of jail, apparently, I just found out. So caught him. And I had that also, not to get too off on a tangent, but they caught him and he went to jail. And I think that also gave me the closure, knowing that. But then I also never kept track of it. I almost completely forgot his name until I was watching an episode of Law and Order SVU and they said literally his name. And I was like, wait, what the hell? That's that guy's name. Wasn't that guy's name? I wonder what. Then I looked him up and I was like, oh, he gets out of jail this month. My God, like crazy. It was, and I still didn't get any emotions coming up at all about it. That's how you know. That was a perfect example that you gave. And that when we talked about it, you just feeling a sense of peace, or when the person's name comes up or someone's talking about the thing that happened, you could be sent back right into that moment as if it was happening yesterday. And the brain actually confuses that with it happening all over again. So then you're triggering your body to respond in a physiological way, like you mentioned, and then you're going right through it again. And that's how you keep the trauma loop going in the body.
You got it. Now, in your response, I'm just to hear that I want to acknowledge you as well for where you are in that journey, because there's a lot of women who cannot get there, right? So the fact you have no physiology whatsoever, I just want to acknowledge you and give you your flowers, because the other thing too is, right, when we are caught up in the anxiety and ruminating, right, then we're not fully available for the present, for the purpose that we've been assigned. And so would all the women that are attached to you, that you go out and support, would they be getting the fullness of you? Would you have even stepped into this role that you're in, right? If you were sort of pent up with fear and anxiety and even resentment and rumination. So that's one, right? We're not available for our purpose, right? One. Two,
very good point. That's so good. So good. Right? Let's hear two.
Okay. Two, can you be grateful for what you were bitter for?
Can't believe you just said that, because that is the other piece of what I said to myself was, I am so grateful it happened, because if it didn't, then this wouldn't have happened. This wouldn't have happened. And this wouldn't have happened. I wouldn't be who I am today if it didn't happen. So this is actually a practice that I have with my clients and at my retreats, when we're transmuting the pain and the resentment and the shame and the guilt and whatever we're carrying, the forgiveness that needs to happen to ourselves, forgive ourselves or others. It's this simple fill in the blank of, thank God this happened, because if it didn't, then insert good thing, insert good thing, insert good thing. I'm so grateful this happened, because if it didn't, then insert good thing wouldn't have happened. So it's just this reframe. And this is a perfect way to close the loop on this topic, where it's like all these women that you mentioned may not be able to move on or to process this and let it pass and let it just be part of their story that doesn't define them and doesn't make them any less than or anything. Like if they're associating it with their worth, they're making it mean something. It's my fault. I did this. It's my fault. The blame and all of that they're carrying. It's about redefining the perspective. It's redefining the meaning that they made it. Hence the redefine.
Go jump in there. Did you say redefine or redefine? But anyways, go ahead.
Redefine the meaning you made of something, and your body will detach. It will let go of it. And then suddenly you'll melt away 15 pounds or more, and just nonstop, without diet, without exercise, without anything. It's just the body is holding on to these stored stories. That's what I call them, stored stories. So if you can make a list of all the things that have ever happened in your life that you are still holding on to, and you know if you're holding on to something, you think about it, you ruminate, like we said, but if there's something that pops up and it triggers you, or you get upset, you feel activated by it, it's still living in your body. If you can talk about it like I just did, like it's nothing, I didn't have to go trigger warning, oh my God, and get all emotional and crying about it, not to minimize anyone's experience or even my own. But really, though, it's something that happened, and it happened for a reason, for you. Find the medicine, find the wisdom, find the gratitude, and take your power back from it. And it's that simple. And you don't have to make it mean something negative about you. It's not that you did something wrong or it's your fault. And that's the power that you reclaim.
Amen. So you said the word reframe. Like, how do you empower yourself? Or because up to that point, you're a victim, right?
Right.
So how do you become basically taking your power back in that situation? So the minute you were able to, there's a level of acceptance, right? You're trusting, right? That along this journey, everything has a purpose.
Mhm.
Even this,
Yep.
in my case, how is God going to use it? Right? What I was going to say was one of the other strategies I give people in a way to quickly reframe the story is literally just going from why to what. So instead of asking why questions, why did this happen to me? Right? Instead, you're asking, what's the meaning of this moment? What is being required of me? Because you said getting the wisdom.
Right.
Well, how do we get the wisdom? We have to ask those big, open-ended, powerful questions.
Yep.
And so it's, what's the lesson I'm supposed to learn here? What's the wisdom I'm supposed to gain? So the minute you shift from why, which kind of keeps you in that powerless spiral of victimhood, where it feels like you have no agency in the situation, all of a sudden now it's like, what's the goodies? What's the gold I'm supposed to get? Because there's always, believe it or not, there's always something we're supposed to get in every situation. In my case, I realized I met him when I was 19. I found my voice going through that situation. And boy, did I find my voice.
Right.
One day he told me, Dionne, I don't know who you are anymore. And I said, wow, thank you. Thank you. Right. Not to mention the beautiful son that, I was gifted, right? And we can keep going. But yes, there's something in it for us.
So
yeah.
Yeah. That's what has me really just moving forward through everything that I get hit with. Like, I could tell you some things that happened this past year that would blow your mind, and you would just be like, that's awful. And then the whole time I'm sitting in it like, what is this? Why is this showing up? What is this trying to teach me? What am I not seeing here? What is this mirroring back to me? Just asking all these questions and really sitting with it, because it's like, why did that happen? That's insane. What is happening here? Like, I could tell you if you want to know the crazy stories, but I feel like for me, I'm such an open book and I'm very transparent, and I just talk about my experience. I don't hold anything inside. And I think that's also why I am fit and petite and all these things, because I don't carry anything. I really don't. And I'm such an open book that I will say things that your average person wouldn't say. They'll keep it private. And I just don't believe in that. I really don't believe in that. Because if I hold it in to spare someone, their feelings or their comfort, because, why would you say that out loud? Like, I'll give you an example. So for example, here, when I am getting out of a relationship, right? And people could say, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Oh, I'm okay. I'm good. Girl, no. You know what happened? Like, I will go into it. They'll be like, it's like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting all that. When people are expecting you to just be like, I'm fine. How are you? Like, don't do that. Actually tell them. I dare you to actually tell them. When somebody asks you, hey, how's it going? Good. How are you? You know what? Actually, I'm not really good. This thing just happened to blah, blah, blah. Are you asking for real? Would you really like to know? Then they'll be surprised at that level of authenticity and that invitation to be transparent and open. Then you never know, it might open the door for them to reciprocate. And then you're having an actual authentic exchange with somebody, whereas you're not just having this like small talk that people actually hate. So,
man, I wholeheartedly agree. I always say, give me the long version. Like, I'm that person. I want the long version. That's one. Two, whether it's your vulnerability about what you're going through at the moment and what that offers, as you said, in terms of connection, deeper level of, trust, etc. Not to mention what we overcome. It's not like our testimonies aren't for us to keep to ourselves. So just so you know, I did run from this calling for a while. Like I felt like I was getting those divine nudges, but this is something I did carry shame around. Who wants to talk about that? But then I realized it's not for me.
Yeah.
Right? It's because who else out there may need to hear it and realize, hey, you can actually overcome this and have a beautiful life. It doesn't have to be the end of your story. So hearing you say that, you are such a gift to so many because you are freeing so many people up because you're willing to help them put their guard down so they can
Yeah.
get what they need,
It's really activating because it makes people very uncomfortable, and they'll either love it and dive in and you're tell me the whole story, or they'll be like, okay, when is she going to stop talking? And then they can move on with their lives. Cause it's so uncomfortable for some people to be that real or to receive or experience someone being that real. And I think it's just so interesting because in the day and age that we're in with AI and everything being so fake, you're scrolling and you don't even know if things are human anymore or what the content, it's just all so curated that when you see someone real and being vulnerable and talking, you stop and you really dive in because we're all craving this level of connection and authenticity. So with that being said, I wanted to ask you a personal question, if I may, regarding the calling that you were having and feeling the nudges and saying that you didn't want to talk about this because you had shame around it, right? It's like, oh my God, this happened to me and I don't want the world to know, but I'm getting this nudge to talk about it. And I feel like it's my duty to talk about it. And I have a similar energy, a similar story where I didn't want to show up talking about something specific. Also afraid of getting hit with a defamation case or slander or something like that. What was that, navigating that like for you? How, if you could give advice to someone who feels like the same way, they have a story to tell, they feel like they have this nudge moving them in this direction. This didn't happen to them for no reason. And they know that. And they're afraid of the judgment. They're afraid of retaliation or, getting hit with defamation. How do you share your story and your truth like that?
Thankfully, in my case, I was able to share first, hey, are you, especially when I wrote the book, right? I'm going to be sharing our story, but letting you know this is really helping people. People are actually getting healing from it. So definitely, if you can, if it's possible, it's actually letting the people in your lives know that you're going to be sharing the story, right? So that's one. For me, like I said, I felt like this, I was being called to do this. Be aware of the signs because there's usually multiple. In my case, the last sign, I was at a retreat in the desert. It was actually a faith-based women's retreat, 40 women. And this is when I said, I can't run from this anymore. There was a activity where they had us in teams, 5 teams, and there was a chest. And in the chest for each team, there were 8 keys, right? So 5 teams, 8 keys, and each key had a word on it. And remember, 40 women. And I would pick the forgiveness key.
Which key?
The forgiveness key.
Really?
That's when I knew, okay, I
Wow.
cannot ignore this anymore. And that's when I declared it in front of these 40 women that I'm going to create a program, right? So if you keep hearing something over and over again, then there's probably something to it.
Yeah.
Might want to start exploring that, Other things I will say is when you realize it's not about you. And we actually had this conversation. Sometimes you need to be reminded, by the way, right? When you remember it's not about you, that this testimony is designed to empower, heal, enlighten. There's someone out there that needs to hear your story. So when you become less of the equation and it's really about being of service to those who are supposed to hear your story, then it makes it, again, you're empowered to go out and share it versus worrying about what people think because it's not about me, right? So yeah.
That's actually so powerful. Remember that it's not about you. That's the thing that got me to show up in 2020 and launch my podcast. I had to set aside the fact that I was afraid of what people would think. I was afraid of just in general, people talking because my childhood was hugely based upon reputation being everything. So that was really scary for me. And then who am I to even do this? Like, who's going to listen to me? Who cares what I have to say? I battled all those demons, right? And what I did was I told myself that exactly what you said. It's not about me. I have to set aside my ego, my fears, my issues, my things, because my stories are meant to be shared. They have to, they get to be shared, because anytime I've shared a story in person with somebody random that I met, it changed their life. And so I need to put this on a podcast so it can reach whoever it's meant to reach. And that's when I launched it, because I set myself aside and I said, it's not about me. It's about who it's meant to reach, period.
Yes, yes, and yes. Yeah, that's what it's about. And who's supposed to hear it will hear it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it'll find exactly who it's meant to. As the saying goes, I don't know if it's when the teacher is ready, the student appears, or the student is ready, the teacher appears. I think it works both ways, because if you think about it, some people, or I'll just say women in general, because I think it's women that listen to my podcast the most, but they feel the calling to teach, to step into coaching and mentorship and holding space in some capacity. And so they do this with reluctance because they want to, but they're like, who am I to do this? And they doubt themselves. So then when they are actually ready, but don't believe they're ready, their student appears. And the opposite, when the student is like, I want to learn this, I'm ready to heal, the teacher appears. For me, it was 2016 when I was living in New York and I had just left a relationship and I fell into like the darkest place. And I was like, what is the point of all of this? Working a job, making money to pay bills, spending my day traveling to and from. I get home, I barely have time for myself. I have to cook, I have to clean, I have to walk my dog, and then I have to sleep and wake up and do it all over again. What is the point of this? This is stupid. So I really got into this really dark place. Like, what's the point of life? I mean, it's so dumb. You work and then you pay bills and then you die. Like, that was where my head was at. And then out of nowhere, so it's a new apartment I just moved into. Such a crazy story. I won't get into how I ended up in this apartment, but I just know I was divinely guided. And I went into the dog run within like the second day that I was there. And there was a woman there with her dog and her Sesame Street shoes, because she worked at Sesame Street. And she and I connected. And then for my birthday, which was shortly after we met, she handed me this book by Gabrielle Bernstein, called The Universe Has Your Back. Now, this shocked me for two reasons. One, I had no idea who this woman was, this Gabby Bernstein woman, who is all about manifestation and things. I wasn't even remotely close to woo-woo at the time. I would roll my eyes at anything spiritual or woo-woo, okay? And so I get this book, and it's Gabby Bernstein, The Universe Has Your Back. In 2013, I started, when I was living in Arizona and I was in school to be a teacher, teaching already, I started writing this book called The Universe Is My Bitch and It Can Be Yours Too. So I'm like, this sounds eerily familiar. And why was I writing that book? Because from like 2006 to 2009, I was saying yes to illogical things that you should say no to, because what do you mean you're going to quit your job and go to New York to audition for this thing? What if you don't get it? You need a job. You have bills to pay. You have rent and a car payment. What do you mean you're just going to take the days off or the boss is not giving you days off and you're just going to quit and go and audition, and then you get picked out of thousands of people and they put a microphone in your hand and they go, here you go, and you're like, what do I do? And you go and you do it, and it turns out you're amazing at it. And how else would you have ever figured that out if not taking that insane risk, right? So then you end up finishing the tour, and then you go home and you're unpacking and a little part of you is dying, and you're like, no, I don't want to just go back to normal life. That feels so wrong. And all of a sudden I get a phone call. Hey, we're doing a show in Vegas. You want to come? Sure. Repacking. Let's go. And then I go to Vegas for this 3-day trip. On my third day, an hour before my flight, suitcase in hand, ready to go back home to Chicago. There's that voice again. No, I don't want to go back to normal life. No. And then I just decided, I was like, you know how you have a devil on the left side or right side and the angel and it was like, stay, have fun, pool party, great weather, palm trees. Oh my God, you got a nice fat bonus. You're fine. Explore, adventure, have fun. Then this one was like, no, your mom's going to kill you. People are going to talk. You need to go back and get a job and find a husband. You're 20. What now? Like, you need to get your shit together and get back to work and do life the way that you're supposed to do it. And I was like, nope, I'm staying. I'm supposed to do it. Yeah. So then I was like, nope, I'm staying. And I turned toward the MGM Grand where I was standing in front with the suitcase. I gave my suitcase to the bellhop. I turned toward the casino floor to go to the pool party, Wet Republic. And before I even made it a quarter of the way in, this guy stops me. He goes, hey, where are you going? I was like, I don't know. I just missed my flight on purpose. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah. He's like, cool. Do you want to come tonight to the bank at the Bellagio? I was like, sure, why not? And that night he puts me shoulder to shoulder with Leonardo DiCaprio in his VIP. Instead of going to Chicago and being on a flight back home, that was my night. And then the next night, and then the next night. And then I stayed for several months. I found an apartment. It was like a mile from the strip. My roommate happened to be from Chicago. What are the odds of that? So I'm just like, wow, I feel guided here. Then I started promotional modeling. He got me a job with him. I got paid to bring beautiful women that I would meet in the bathrooms all over the city. And I would get them to come to the VIP that I was managing. And I would get paid for every beautiful woman that I brought to the party. Like that was my life instead of working in a freaking cubicle. And then one day I get stopped at the mall by a casting director and he goes, hey, you kind of look like Kim Kardashian. Would you want to do reality TV?
You do.
What?
You do.
What?
You remind me of her as you said that.
That's funny. Yeah. So he goes, would you want to do reality TV? And I was like, no, my mom would kill me. So you see how there's still parts of me that would say no. And it was to those deeply ingrained, I can't bring shame to my family, like that deeply rooted. So I had to overcome that. And it was such a thing that held me back. And I know that a lot of women that follow me resonate with that because they're Indian or they're Middle Eastern. They had that similar upbringing of this super strict way of living and being, and that this is your life and this is what you have to do, And so I was like, no, my mom would kill me. I can't do reality TV. And at the time, Kim Kardashian was brand new. And reality TV was basically Flavor of Love and Rock of Love. And that was the extent of it. And then I was like, no, I can't do that. And he goes, okay, well, there's this Warner Brothers movie. That should be good. I was like, okay. So I did that and they put me in a bikini. They took me to the Caesar's Palace. They sat me down on the side of the pool and they just said, sit here and look pretty. And that was it. That was what I had to do. So I thought I was just going to be lurking in the background. And then turns out that I take up the entire screen for like 6 seconds in a white bikini. And they took that scene and put it in the trailer. So as soon as the movie came out and people are telling me, oh my God, Rita, you're in The Hangover. I was like, no, what? And I saw it. I was like, my mom's going to kill me.
You're in Hangover? Oh, we're going to have to go back and watch it now.
My God, the first thing out of my mouth was my mom is going to kill me. And she's not even the strict one. My dad is the strict one, which is so crazy. But then when I became a 5th grade teacher, I was scared that I wouldn't get the job because of that movie. And then and I also had a tattoo here on my left arm that I got removed before I became a teacher because I didn't want the kids to be influenced by my tattoo. And I was hiding it with long sleeves, teaching in Arizona, by the way. So now it's like, oh, you could have all these piercings and tattoos. Nobody gives a shit. I spent 10 grand getting a tattoo removed. So ridiculous. But all that to say, like we were talking about the illogical things, the things that you say yes to and trusting that in the 2006 to 2009, that window of me saying yes to things and the magic unfolding and just like unrealistic, illogical things by saying yes and taking risks and just going with the flow of what your soul wants and not what logic says to do, not what other people say you should do and what's right, because only your soul knows, and what you came here for is the truth of what your experience is meant to be, not the life that was designed for you that you were born into. You're supposed to break free from that. And I feel like forgiveness comes back into the picture because you have to have compassion and empathy for your parents, for how they were raised, what they believe is the right way, and forcing that on you because they think that's the right thing and they're just trying to take care of you and they mean well, right? But it's like, you know what? I have to live my life. I had to sit my mom down and go, Mom, please. Because she called me every day when I was in Vegas. She's like, come home. What are you doing? Come home. Come home. I was like, Mom, can I live, bro? Like, what is this? I feel so bad for her. And now we're like the best of friends. And she came to my Bali retreat and she healed her arthritis and lost weight and she's glowing and she was the life of the party. Like this personality came out that I've never seen before. I didn't realize how funny she was. Like, Just your life is meant to unfold and you have to allow it to. So please, everyone who's listening or watching, notice where you're being pulled. Notice when your soul is like, I want to do this. And notice when you're telling it no. And just picture the little girl inside you and you're telling her no. Like, why don't you just say yes and expect it to work out and not worry about the worst case scenario? Because the positive outcome and the negative outcome are both equally possible. And you're focusing on the negative, and worrying is praying for the stuff you don't want. And so here's me from 2006 to 2009 living this big, crazy, epic life that I started speaking about on Clubhouse, and people were listening to these stories that were inspiring them to quit their jobs and start their businesses and pursue their dreams and all of that. And I share these stories on my podcast for that same reason. And I had that knowing way back when that I'm meant to share these stories. And just like you, Dionne, and everyone listening, we all have a story. Our unique soul came here with a mission, with a purpose. We're not meant to be stuck in these jobs we hate and just working paycheck to paycheck. We're meant to be abundant. We're meant to share our gifts. We're meant to impact the world in some way. And if you're holding yourself back, that's why you're depressed. That's why you're overweight. That's why you're sad. That's why you're resentful and angry. That's why you're a victim, because you are not expressing yourself the way your soul came here to be expressed.
So good. Mic drop, right? So much in there. And if we want to even bring it back to forgiveness again, imagine I had done what other people thought I should have done. If I had to go by my family, you're going to do what? Start a financial literacy program with who? But wow, look how much came from that, because I didn't resist what was presented before me, even if it wasn't packaged the way I expected it to be. So I always say, make plans and then leave room,
I love that. Because there's a saying that goes like, you make a plan and then God laughs or something like that. But I love that better, because it's like you're making a plan, but then you're leaving room for it to unfold as it's meant to. And that's actually so powerful, because that is why I've had so much success in when I take these big risks. Because when I told you earlier that I lived in Arizona, like after I went from from Vegas back to Chicago, because I gave in to my mom's pleading with me to like come home. And when the winter came, I was like, Mom, please, I cannot live here, Mom, please. Ironically, I just signed a lease 3 minutes away from my mom just to be close to her. So,
but but you can hopefully, be bi-coastal somewhere is what I'm hoping for the winters.
Girl, the only thing that's getting me is like, I don't want to pay $3,000 and not be here. Like that part gets me. But then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to make millions this year, and $3,000 will be nothing. So that's what we're going for this year.
I touch and agree. It's already done.
It's already done. I love it. My gosh. So going back to the biggest part of all of this, the forgiveness piece, can you please leave us with a practice? Maybe tell us a little bit about your dream framework that you mentioned. What is something that we could do in our own way, like maybe our own practice we could create to cultivate the forgiveness within ourselves, for other people? How can you, because you know how you say forgive, okay, I forgive you, but then it's still living in your body. How do you actually truly forgive and know we know we've talked about how the forgiveness piece is like, we know because we feel the peace, but how do you actually get there instead of just saying, okay, I forgive you? Like, how do you actually get there?
Sure. Well, we talked about a few of those access points, right? Through commitment,
right.
Acceptance, right? Trusting that everything's happening for a reason. And there's like the most difficult things in our lives are actually our greatest teachers. So that's the reframe, right? It's there to teach us something. But if I give you one more, right? And this is going to be around forgiving ourselves, because we didn't really talk about that, which many times is even harder than learning to forgive somebody else, right?
That's true.
So when it comes to ourselves, right? If someone came to you and said, I made a huge mistake, and they're carrying all this shame and guilt around it, what would you say to them?
Yeah. You would be compassionate. You would give them empathy. You would tell them it's okay. You would help them to feel better. Yeah.
And so why not turn that right back on yourself, right?
It's so true.
Moments when you're in that self beat up loop, right? So that's really what would you say to your best friend in that moment, say, what would I say to my son?
Yeah.
And then turn those words back onto you. That's one thing.
It's true. Yeah. Have you seen this thing? It was, I don't know if it was Jay Shetty or who it was that shared it. It was like, write down all the things that you say about yourself that are just the most horrible things. And then go find someone that is in your family, like a little sister, a little sibling or little cousin or something, and go and say those things to them. You would never.
Never.
Yeah.
But there's something about, so going back to, I guess this is where I'll end it. Shame, it lives in darkness. And that's why it's so much harder we will quickly vent about somebody else. So we're getting it out. You see what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
when it comes to shame, it lives in darkness because we're not talking about it. So that's why it festers and it just, it lasts. It's so much harder to shake. But the minute you speak it out, it already starts to lose its grip.
I have evidence of this. Like actual hardcore evidence. I had a women's circle. Say that again?
Take us home.
My gosh. So I had a women's circle here in Chicago, it's technically St. Charles, and we had a fire circle. Okay. So we're sitting around a fire as 8 of us women who've never met each other before. And one woman, her name is Lisa. She came in carrying so much. And once she spoke out loud and was witness that she was molested as a child and kept the secret for 27 years and never said a single word to anyone. She cried and she released it and gave it to the fire. And she came back to the following session, which was 2 or 3 weeks later. And she said she lost 15 pounds since the last one. And then after that, it was like 2 or 3 months later, I met with her again. And she's like, Rita, I lost 47 pounds and I haven't changed my diet or exercise or anything. And it's because of that heavy weight she was carrying, which also impacted her self-worth. And that's why she was staying in the marriage she was in. And then the veil was lifted and her confidence and her love for herself was restored. And she was no longer able to deal and tolerate that marriage as she was thinking she deserved. That is the power of releasing shame.
Yes. So thank you for just bringing it all together with a true example, a really powerful example of the importance of being in community, right? She was in the right community, a safe, trusted space where you can speak these things out that want to, keep a hold on us.
Right.
So we're
Yeah.
not living our highest and best lives. So thank you for sharing that. That's a
You're so sweet. Thank you. You're so sweet. One thing I wanted to touch on was the book that you wrote. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So it's called the 90-Day Conquering Unforgiveness Journal. Now, the tagline is for high performing high achievers, because I recognize that we're not just dealing with forgiveness, in our, familial, settings at home, or even in our, relationships, whether that's in church, et cetera, or in our community spaces, right? It's also in the workplace. So from working with leaders and founders around the world, right, I realized that as, high performing, high achieving leaders, we are really, really hard on ourselves and it holds us back. And I'm a recovering perfectionist myself, so I can relate. So I just kept hearing these recurring themes. And so I realized not only do I need to take this out into some of the most unlikely spaces, right? I've taught this in the government. I've taught this in academic institutions, corporate spaces, because people are peopling everywhere, right? That's one. So this journal can be for anyone, but that's why that tagline is there. And it's a mindfulness practice. It's a 90-day journey of guided prompts daily. We talked about gratitude. That's in there. That's in the morning. So it's a quick morning and evening routine for all the busy people out there, right? But as we know, if we are doing something and reflecting daily, morning and night, you're going to see a shift, right? And so the idea is also, it's not just about the big grievances, right? What about releasing and practicing forgiveness on it daily? So you make it not only, a habit, but a lifestyle is the idea.
Yeah.
So
it becomes integrated, a part of you.
Exactly. So there's my story in there. We talk about the neuroscience. We're debunking myths. And I've even put in some of those personal transformation tools to support you with your forgiveness journey.
Amazing. I'll have to link it in the show notes. And is there anything that you would like to leave the community with? Is there something on your heart that you'd like to say that's just still bubbling up, or anything at all that to end this with?
Yes. I think you nailed it on the head. What you opened with is what we're going to end with.
Beautiful.
Forgiveness is for you.
Mm.
It's for you. You take nothing else from this podcast today, is that it's for you.
It's so powerful. And it just reminds me of my mom, because I know how much she's carrying. And it's like that the one thing that people that struggle with forgiveness is they feel the other person just doesn't deserve it, because you've not forgiving them is in your mind punishment for them. Like you're punishing them, keeping them at a distance, but it's only causing you pain and suffering.
It's
truly.
Yeah, it's for your joy, your peace, your freedom. It's for you.
What would you say to that, to someone who says they don't deserve my forgiveness? What would you say to that?
Yes. Well, they may not deserve it, but you do. The very thing that you think is protecting you is actually hurting you.
That was so good.
Yeah.
That was a mic drop moment. Beautiful. All right. Well, my dear Dionne, I could talk to you for hours. I love
You.
so much. I'm so glad we connected. I wanted to also just invite everyone who's watching, listening, to connect with Dionne. I'll share everything about her in the show notes. Follow her on Instagram. She's speaking all over the place, and she's actually going to give me some advice so I can get on some stages. So maybe we'll leave this as a bonus episode. If you're interested in becoming a speaker, she's going to give me some tips and tricks to get me going on that journey, which I have something booked in September called Unleash Your Brave, where I am the MC and main stage speaker. So definitely come to that. I will link that in the show notes as well. But so for this episode, that's a wrap. Please, 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 if this touched your heart, if you know someone that needs to forgive someone, send this to them. Take a moment right now and just scroll down and hit the stars and give us a 5-star rating. Yay. And send us something.
Hot off the press, I'll also be joining you on the main stage, bringing this message of forgiveness. So if you want more, we'll see you there. Hot off the press.
Oh my gosh, amazing. Yay. Well, such an honor. So grateful for you. Thank you for being with me today. And we'll just end this right here, and then we can continue chatting, keep recording. So then if it ends up being something so juicy, I could offer it as like a bonus for anyone who, if that's okay with you, so they could, because I'm sure there's so many of my followers that are really wanting to speak on stages too. And they're just like, how do I start? What do I do? You know? Yeah.
But were you thinking right now?
If you have the time, we were talking about kind of cramming it in, but if you have to go, it's totally fine.
Do you? Because I actually just remember, it's my alert's coming up for my 2 o'clock. So unfortunately, you have to run, but
I'm not able to see it. That's why, because right here, there we go. It says an hour, 7 minutes. Okay. All right, no worries. We can touch base another time. I'm heading to Turkey on July 6th, 7th, and I'll be back on the 14th. So,
so when you get settled in.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, my love. Thank you for this. It was so beautiful. It's such a great conversation.
Yes.
Okay.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.